Hyrule is a land of magic, monsters, and sprawling villages that practically beg you to settle down in them. But just because a town looks bustling doesn't mean the entire kingdom is on the brink of a catastrophic population crash. Right behind me is one of the many peaceful-looking settlements found throughout The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. It's beautiful, cozy even, but its long-term survival currently depends on an empty well, a man with a stick, and a severe lack of genetic diversity. And you might think, wow, what a thriving and peaceful society. But how exactly are the people of Hyrule surviving? Is anyone having kids?
Nope.
Why are half of the people wandering the countryside? And how did this one guy get stuck in the well? What is it, boy? Dilly is stuck in the well? Again? Because here's the thing, population sustainability is complicated, like really complicated. It requires a lot more than just avoiding bokoblins to survive. Real-world societies rely on genetic flow, sanitation, a stable ratio of children to elders, and carrying capacity just to keep things going. And no, I'm not talking about the many things Link can hold. Although, I mean, he has to be like super strong though, right? Is that over 100 bananas? Well, my wife and I did months of research into population ecology, conservation biology, and why there may be a scientific reason for how the Gerudo are all women. It's actually pretty crazy and exciting, so be sure to stick around for that one. All to figure out if Hyrule's population is, well, actually vanishing. We'll reveal which race has the absolute highest biological chance of surviving into the next century, and who might not be making it. We started our census with the Rito, from the bottom of Rito Village to the very top. Then we searched the furthest reaches of Hyrule, checking every hut, stable, and vacation destination. Man, these guys look really chill. Until we found and counted every Rito alive. Can I, get a margarita or something? And right from the start, we saw some good signs. Almost all the Rito were found in Rito Village, which is great. Being together is an important factor for finding someone to help pass along your genes. And I'm not talking about these guys. Why are there so many stairs in Rito Village? Couldn't have put in an elevator or something? Oh, I'm so hungry. I'm sure these birds have something to eat around here. As someone who works 2 jobs, it's hard to find time to get something good to eat. That's why today's sponsor is CookUnity. CookUnity is a chef-to-you meal delivery platform that connects you with hundreds of fresh, fully prepped meals from award-winning chefs delivered right to your door. With CookUnity, you can choose from over 300 meals nationwide each week, including over 25 diets and global cuisines. All meals are handcrafted in small batches in local kitchens by you. There's over 180 chefs on the platform, including Food Network stars, James Beard Award winners, and Michelin-starred masters. Meals are delivered fully cooked, so all you have to do is heat them up in 2 minutes or less, and you're ready to eat. Go to the link in the description now to try CookUnity and get 50% off your first order of chef-made meals delivered fresh to your door. Today we tried the pork katsu with Japanese curry by Chef Sergio Tominaga. And oh my, it really hit the spot. The pork was moist and the sauce was delicious. It looked beautiful. It really felt like eating restaurant quality food at home without all the time commitment. We also tried Mom's beef brisket and the chicken jalapeno quesadilla, and they were both delicious. And that's one of the many reasons why we loved CookUnity. There's so much variety to pick from. CookUnity is offering my viewers 50% off their first order. Click the link in the description below and use my code PapaGoron50 to try it out. And thank you so much, CookUnity, for sponsoring this video. Now back to the video. But also, even the birds across the map can get back to Rito Village quickly, because it turns out birds can fly. I know, you're shocked. There is probably somebody out there that didn't know birds could fly, and for you, I'm very happy that I am I am making your day. I'm blowing your mind right now. And you're welcome. But yes, flying is a huge plus for the survival of the Rito, because even if they are attacked, they can usually get away quickly. And Rito Village is actually a very defensible destination. I mean, look at this place. It's literally in the center of a lake. This is your classic moat castle setup. They could easily break down these bridges and be on an isolated island that only they can access. They can even fly in supplies. It's super defensible. And to add to that, the Rito have an excellent fighting ability. They are aces with a bow. So we're already going to give these guys a star for defenses. A star for defenses? Oh right, let me explain. In both Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, we categorized every character by age and reproductive category. Hey, get your mind out of the gutter. It's not that kind of video. And for each race, we are going to rate their survivability across 5 categories. Defenses. This is structures and fighters. If a moblin rolls into town, is it a minor inconvenience or a really bad time? Sanitation. This is the gross stuff. Are these communities pristine, or should Link watch his step in the street? Resource quality. This covers food and water. Is the community self-sufficient, or are they one missed delivery away from starvation? Population structure. This is population size and reproductive category. Are the different towns connected, or has the dating pool shrunk to a dating puddle? And population growth. It's the ultimate test of survival. Are they securing a future, or are they leaving their story to the history books? Or, in this case, the slabs in the sky. You know, this is not very accessible. If you're gonna write your history on anything, probably don't put it up really high where no one can read it. For each of the 5 categories, they will get a star, or they won't. Then we will add up each category, and by the end, each race will be given a total of up to 5 stars. Then we will know who is actually going to inherit Hyrule. Good job, Rito. Off to a great start, but that might be short-lived, because the next thing we looked at was sanitation. And if you watched our video about where the citizens of Hyrule are relieving themselves, you know where this is going. Birds tend to relieve themselves on the go. How would you like it to go for a run in the morning and you just... That's what birds do. If they aren't clean, nests and roosting spots can harbor disease. That's why most birds don't generally go where they sleep. Although, if you put them in a cage, they don't have anywhere else to really go. So make sure you're cleaning your bird cages if you have birds. How would you like to sleep where you poop? Don't do that. Add to that the excellent ventilation here, and we're actually giving them a star for sanitation. Unfortunately though, the same thing can't be said for the water below. If the Rito aren't relieving themselves in the village, they have to be going somewhere else. And sure, they might not be going directly into the lake below, but even if they stay on shore, maybe use one of these smaller islands, the next heavy rain or snowmelt will wash all the guano right into the lake. And that means a feast for bacteria. But I hear you in the comments. They just fly over to the land and poop away from the water. Okay. Hear me out. You just had a long day of work. 5 meetings about job performance, and Linda yapping about her cute dog every 5 minutes in the cubicle next to yours has driven you to a state most adults feel in their early 30s.
Just take me now, Lord, please!
So before heading home, you decide to swing by Taco Bell really quick to get you some grub, right? Because you don't want to go home and cook. You're tired. And also, your kids are waiting at home to start a WWE cage match in the living room as soon as you arrive. So you get your food, drive home, eat your food really fast, and begin to take a couple from the high roads. After some time, you survive the cage match, you're tired. So you start getting ready for bed. But just before you slip into those covers, you feel your tummy start to rumble. Oh boy, you know what that means. Okay, so you have two options here. You could use the bathroom right in your house, or you could run out of your house, jump in your car, drive across the neighborhood to the park, and drop your load there. Which option are you choosing, huh? Go on. Tell me below. Which option are you choosing? Bathroom in your house or across the neighborhood to the park bushes? So, like we said, the Rito are likely relieving themselves on their island and not dropping their business behind the bushes across the lake. So, that's bad water quality and is definitely a mark against their long-term survival. But hey, water is only half of the resource rating. It turns out that a lot of birds get their water from their food. So who cares if they have clean drinking water? You know, if you're a Hylian, that sucks, but for them, it's probably okay. So, what is the food situation for the Rito? Oh, right. Well, they might be able to do a little hunting and foraging, but one strong snowstorm and they are all dying of starvation. That's not great, especially for a race that's not nomadic. And even after the blizzard is over, Badali is up here trying to stock up on food. If she could catch her own fish, she wouldn't be offering us arrows for 3 fish. I mean, have you seen an eagle hunt? 3 fish is child's play. Maybe they stopped doing the bird thing and actually just started using a bow and arrow for fishing.
Sploosh.
Incredibly inconvenient. And it gets worse when we look in the shop. Most of the food here isn't even local. Where did you get butter? And how did it not melt on the way here? Must have had some choo-choo jelly. So in good weather and happy times, they can probably import enough food and maybe even clean water. But with the slightest disturbance, starvation is a serious threat. And they definitely aren't getting a star for resources. And that just leaves us with 2 things left to explore: population structure and population growth. Population growth is pretty intuitive. Is your population getting bigger or smaller? But what about population structure? What is that about? Population structure is the makeup of a group of organisms. How many individuals are there? And are there even numbers of reproductive males and females? And can those individuals get to each other when it's time to make the next generation? Stop it, it's not that kind of video. So what is going on with the Rito? Well, the Rito seem to have a central population in Rito Village, which is important. It's much easier to pass on genes when everyone is together. Across the kingdom, we only found 28 Rito, but there are some pros and cons to that. On one hand, the Rito have a very even ratio of males to females. 15 males and 13 females. And that's exactly what you want. Every individual needs a mother and a father, so equal availability of both means a higher genetic diversity. But on the other hand, 15 plus 13, that's only 28 birds total. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, considers any species with fewer than 50 individuals to be critically endangered. And that's not a good look for the Rito. So we're giving them no stars for the population structure. But what about population growth? Maybe they can recover if they have more children than elders. Well, we don't really see any old Rito, just this one old owl. Haven't I seen you before? But the absence of elders might make sense, because in real life, birds follow a type 2 survivorship curve. This means whether they are 1 year old or 60 years old, the probability of dying is exactly the same. A lot of them just don't make it to old age, and that means they have to consistently produce children just to keep up with their population size. So, were there any children born between Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom? No, absolutely zero. no new children were born between the games. Some kids became teens, and 3 adult males appeared out of nowhere. They just showed up. Must have came from hole in the ground. But the nurseries are empty, and it gets worse. Of all children, there is only one boy, Tulin. And of the 4 available girls, 3 are sisters. So if these 5 kids are in charge of the next generation, well, all the Rito would be half siblings.
Oh no!
Then the generation after that might not look quite right, as you might imagine. Time to get out the banjos. When all of the children in the village come from just 3 families, that leads us to one of the biggest problems with small populations: genetic depression. Genetic depression happens when inbreeding increases your chances of getting negative genetic mutations. When family members have children together, the shared DNA massively increases the mathematical odds of both parents carrying the same hidden harmful mutations. This can cause all sorts of issues, from autoimmune disease and blood disorders to less severe ailments like the Habsburg jaw. Where is Cass at? I need him to get rid of the accordion. It's banjo time. No star for population growth. And look, I know that this is like, you're like, hey, these are birds. They're probably flying out and doing their business, but we don't know what's beyond Hyrule. So Nintendo, if you could enlighten us, maybe, and give us a reason to think that maybe these birds aren't banjoing it up, maybe do that. And while you're complaining to Nintendo, maybe think about hitting that subscribe button down there. Smash it with that Goron fist of yours. I know that there's like 70% of you still not subscribed. I'm doing a lot of work here. These are hour-long videos talking about very boring subjects that are actually pretty fun to talk about if you have the right Goron to talk about it. So please hit that subscribe button and help us out. Or even just a like. Just a like? So where does that leave us? Well, despite their incredible power of flight and their defensible island, the lack of resources and small population leave the Rito with only 2 stars. Yikes. I hope the other races do better, or the next reincarnation of Link might have nothing left to save.
Hold me closer, Ed. It's getting dark.
As we left Rito Village, we headed east to Goron City. Home. This is my favorite place in all of Hyrule. Good food.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Hot baths, and the shopping isn't too shabby either. Ooh, is that diamonds I see? Daddy's looking for some new jewelry.
Don't ever do that again.
While Goron City itself might not be a fortress, it takes quite a bit of fortitude just to make it up here. Gorons are strong, durable, and don't seem to be afraid of anything, except maybe comments in his YouTube video. Please be nice. I mean, I have never seen a Goron cowering on the side of the road waiting for Link to save them. They're in there doing their stuff. Although it was kind of a side quest in Breath of the Wild, the cowering Goron type deal, but he got over that. That's like a growing up story. You know what I mean? We're not counting that. I can just imagine a Goron knocking down a row of bokoblins like bowling pins. Strike! Not to mention, they can literally stand in lava. Let me repeat that for those in the back. They can literally stand in lava. If you aren't affected by one of the most dangerous substances on Earth, you probably deserve a star for defenses. Literally, if there's like an invading force or something, you put these guys at the front. The other people would just turn around. Okay, but what about Goron sanitation? I mean, all the volcanic fumes and mining dust might make Goron City look, well, a little dirty. But it turns out that Gorons actually have a pretty clean setup. All of the inns and many of the houses have pots that could definitely be used for the potty business. Yes, I know, potty business. We have a whole video on that. You should check it out. It's Where do Hyrule citizens poop? You want to check out that video for more information on that engaging topic. They also generally have taller vases nearby that could hold water for washing up. And we know, we saw you all in the comments. Gorons eat rocks. They don't poop. But do you know that?
Are you sure about that?
Because every creature on Earth makes waste. Even if we compare Gorons to deep sea bacteria that use sulfur mineral compounds to produce energy, these bacteria still produce waste. For most races, sanitation might be about sewage. But for the Gorons, if they are truly just eating minerals, their waste might be closer to what those deep sea bacteria produce. Goron chamber pots might be full of an acidic slurry of heavy metals and solid sulfur crystals. Yikes. For all we know, they could be pooping diamonds. Wait. But whatever the Gorons are leaving behind, it's good to know they have a place to keep their business private. But what about disease? Because sanitation isn't just about controlling your waste. It's also about preventing the spread of disease. And we know from the Oracle of Seasons that Gorons can get sick. So when somebody gets sick, do the Gorons have a way to prevent this spread to everyone else? Well, there are a few important factors to consider. The first is good airflow. This helps reduce the viral load by literally blowing infectious agents away. Spaced out living is important too. When people live in tight quarters, it's incredibly difficult to keep the sickness contained. Just ask any parents with small kids. Yeah, that playground that you let your kids play at, that place is just bacteria heaven. So individuals having separate living places can help slow down the spread of infection. And the last component is medicine. If illness can be treated quickly, then the spread can be minimized. So what about the Gorons? Well, luckily, there seems to be no issues with overcrowding. Every Goron has their own home, and sick people can easily be isolated. So provided somebody on the mountain knows the recipe for lava soup for treating the cold, they seem to be able to treat disease and prevent it from passing to other people. Probably this guy right here at the bistro has the recipe. I mean, he's got a chef's hat after all. He's qualified. So we're giving them a star for sanitation. And so far, the Gorons are looking great. But what about resource quality? Well, if you watched our Water in Hyrule video, you know we gave the water on Death Mountain a red rating. You know, because of volcanic ash and acid mine drainage. Yes, acid mine drainage. But that really only applies to the other races of Hyrule. In Tears of the Kingdom, there are 8 Hylians and 1 Gerudo woman hanging out in and around Goron City. For them, safe water is going to be hard to find. But what about the Gorons? Well, as many of you pointed out, the water in the hot springs might be great. For humans, the extra sulfur, silica, and calcium would leave you with a serious stomachache. But maybe Gorons like all those extra minerals. After all, they do eat rocks. Which brings us to the next half of our resource availability: food. Gorons have no problems getting that sweet, sweet rock roast. If you want to imagine what rock roast tastes like, it's like the best barbecue that you humans have ever tasted. Could you imagine if I actually had rock roast? Now I kind of want, that'd be a fun video if I like had somebody make a rock roast, like actual in real life, and I ate it. I would do that. That'd be great. And also I'd enjoy it. I'd love it with some barbecue sauce.
Do it! Make your dreams come true!
Between rock salt, gems, and rock roast, the Gorons have access to everything they need right on the mountain. And for that, we're giving them a star for resource quality. We're doing better than the Rito so far. But what about the demographics? Well, this is where things get really interesting, because Goron reproduction is a complete mystery. But however it works, they likely reproduce asexually. And organisms that only need one parent to reproduce can get by with a much smaller population. In fact, just one Goron could theoretically maintain a population. But there is a problem with that. It triggers Muller's Ratchet. Muller's Ratchet? Do I need to get Clank?
This pocket crotchetizer is still warm.
But actually, Muller's Ratchet is a genetic rule stating that asexual organisms will always accumulate harmful mutations over time. Basically, it's like making a photocopy of a photocopy. Every time you make a copy, you add a few blurry smudges. And because you threw away the crisp original, those smudges are permanent. That's why the population size is still important. So what is the population size of the Gorons? Well, in Tears of the Kingdom, we found 51 Gorons. And that's actually a lot more than Breath of the Wild, because 17 of those are new in Tears of the Kingdom. But let's be honest, I'm pretty sure the super old wrinkly Gorons with long beards were not born in the last 5 years. Luckily, there is actually one new baby, Little Tool, at the Bedrock Bistro, was probably born between the two games. Yes, population growth. And while most of the Gorons we see appear to be adults, there are also 8 seniors and 6 children in the population. That tells us something pretty important. The Gorons are reproducing quickly enough to replace their older generation. What's even more interesting, we see both elderly Gorons and children that don't seem to age much between the 5 to 8 year gap between games. Taken together, that points towards a Type 1 survivorship curve. In other words, most Gorons likely survive through childhood and adulthood, with the majority dying of old age instead of external threats. And that's the same general pattern we see in animals like elephants and gorillas. These species have relatively few offspring, but spend a lot of time and energy raising them throughout childhood. I mean, so do I. Being a papa is tough. And being a mama, just ask her. It's really hard. She does a great job though. And if the Gorons follow that strategy, it suggests their population is probably living close to its carrying capacity. No, Link. Stop trying to show me your inventory. You at least need to take me on a date first. Stop it. It's not that kind of video. Carrying capacity is the maximum number of organisms an environment can support. In other words, the number of individuals that can physically survive off the available food and other resources while avoiding predation. So if Gorons really do have high survival rates through their early and middle years, they don't need to reproduce quickly to maintain their population. Their number of adults are less likely determined by physical threats and more likely by something simpler, like the availability of rock roast. And since there seems to be no shortage of rocks on Death Mountain, we feel confident about filling in those last 2 stars. Wow, I generally did not expect to give any of the races 5 stars. Good job, Gorons. Yeah! Actually, that kind of makes sense too. I mean, they've been around since Skyward Sword, so I don't think they're going anywhere. I mean, what should we expect from a fantasy race that can literally walk through lava unharmed? That's crazy. Alright, well, that's the Gorons sorted. Give them enough rocks to eat and they'll be happy for generations. Let's leave the fire of the mountain and check out the populations further south. What about the Zora? Well, they've been around a long time too. I mean, look at this beautiful city. This looks like something out of Lord of the Rings. I mean, Elrond is practically greeting the Fellowship over here. And it's extremely defendable too. These bridges are an excellent way to funnel enemies. And the Zora are known to be formidable warriors. Just look at the guards. You don't want to mess with this guy. And look, you can even see them training in Lookout Landing. The Zora are serious. They also have very good teeth hygiene. And they have one big advantage as well, swimming. As long as they are near water, Zora can outpace just about anything. I would say that the Zora are definitely earning a star for defenses. So far, the defenses across all of Hyrule are pretty strong. Surely, none of the other races will be losing a star for being strong and defensive, right? I guess we'll find out, but we still have to finish exploring Zora's domain. So how's the sanitation? Well, the Zora have one massive advantage: flowing water, literally from the sky. And since they're fish, they're likely doing their business right in the water. If you've ever seen a fish tank that desperately needs cleaning, yeah, it's gross. Fortunately, the constant flow of water is nature's waste management system. It carries away the mess and keeps things clean. And I tell you what, Nintendo did a fantastic job of designing Zora's domain. I mean, look at all these waterfalls and the flow of water here. We also have another clue that the water in Zora's domain is pretty clean. The Zoras themselves are actually bioindicators, which means they get sick anytime their environment gets polluted. We saw this at the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom when sludge polluted the waters of Zora's domain. The entire population was sick until the pollution was cleared. Good job, Link. He's on it. Keeps wanting to show me his bag, but he's on it. Since the Zora are healthy after that, we can assume the water is normally pretty clean. And at this point, we were ready to give the Zora another star. But then we saw something. Sleeping pools. All the Zora sleep communally in these pools. And the water isn't going anywhere. Now, I am not saying that they make a mess in their bed. At 100 years old or more, I would think they'd be pretty well potty trained. But communal spaces can spread disease. If the water isn't changed out regularly, these small sleeping pools could definitely be an incubator for infections and other diseases. If one fish in this fish tank gets sick, the risk for all the other fish skyrockets. Can we give half stars? Yeah, let's do half stars. Potentially pooping in your drinking water and sleeping in a swimming pool with 20 other Zora, that feels like a half star. We're gonna give them a half star for this. Up next is resource quality. Well, the waters of Lanayru are actually incredible. The flowing streams and the cascading waterfalls mean that the Zora's domain and Greater Lanayru itself has a lot of available clean water. But what about the food? What do Zora even eat? Well, across the games, we see Zora eating seagrass and other seafood. And they're actually pretty good at getting their food. But there is a catch. Get it? Get it? Catch? Because they're fish, they're Zora. Catch. Boo! Remember to like and subscribe. The Zora in this game don't live right on the sea. There is a big ridge and some rough terrain in the way. If the world had any more calamities or invading forces, they could have difficulty finding their way to the coast. Luckily, the river flowing through town and the nearby East Reservoir Lake probably has enough food to keep them going for a while. And that means another star for the Zora. But what about Zora's population? I mean, this is probably one of the longest living races in Hyrule. So surely that means they have a bustling population, right? Well, despite the fact that they seem to be able to live hundreds, if not thousands of years, there aren't very many of them. There are only 37 Zora in Tears of the Kingdom, and that's 9 more than we saw in Breath of the Wild. 37. Even with balanced reproductive categories, that is an extremely tiny population. There is no way we can give the Zora a star for population structure. And what's worse, none of those new characters in Tears of the Kingdom are children. That means there weren't any children born in the last 5 to 8 years. And at first, that sounds pretty alarming. But for a population this small, it might be perfectly reasonable. What? It all comes down to how slowly the Zora mature. In Tears of the Kingdom, Rivian tells us that Zora aren't considered mature until they reach triple digits. That means they are still children until at least 100 years old. And if they're anything like the Greenland shark, which can live up to 500 years old,
Whoa.
they may only reproduce once every 10 to 20 years after they mature. And suddenly, a gap of 5 to 8 years without any children doesn't seem so unusual. But it does have a consequence. The entire population becomes incredibly dependent on its adults surviving, which means older members of the population should be incredibly important. So we took a closer look at the Zora elders and immediately found something that didn't make sense. Okay? All right, yeah, you look. Where are the Zora grandmas? That's right, we couldn't find any old Zora women. We identified elderly Zora based on traits like wrinkled skin and hunched posture. And every Zora that fit into that criteria was male. So one of two things must be true. Either female Zora age much more gracefully than the men, or they simply don't live as long. And that's strange, because in a lot of fish species, including those Greenland sharks, females actually tend to outlive males. So how can we figure out what's happening here? We would need to track how survival changes across different ages for males and females, which means we need a life table. A life table is a statistical tool used to measure the mortality, survivorship, and life expectancy of a population. Basically, it maps out the probability that an individual of a given age will die before their next birthday, which sounds like the worst kind of present you could ever get. Well, I mean, probably the second worst present. Put in the CDI Zelda games here out of a present here. And fun fact, life tables were originally developed by insurance companies to calculate insurance premiums, pension obligations, and annuity payouts. Yes, you heard that right. The original purpose of this life table was putting a price tag on mortality. But biologists looked at this and turned it into something useful, because biologists are cool like that. I mean, insurance companies are over here being unbiologists by not studying life, and biologists are studying life. See, that's a play on words.
Did you hear that?
A play on.
Words!
Yeah, I know.
Life tables are now used as something positive for conservation and population biology. Anytime we want to quantify and track a population, life tables are a first go-to. So, what would the Zora's life table tell us? Well, as adults, they seem to have a pretty low mortality rate each year. No adults disappeared between the games. But female mortality rate increases earlier than men's because there are no older women. But what about when they are young? Where does the life of a little Zora start? Well, Zoras lay eggs that hatch in the tadpole-like Zora, which is kinda crazy. Can you imagine being a highly intelligent race that goes through a metamorphosis during life? I don't just mean growing up, but like growing completely new limbs. How old do you think they are when they transform? Do you think it's like the Animorphs, who just think really hard and suddenly legs pop out? Well, I thought normal puberty was hard, but it gets worse, because Zora eggs are extremely high risk. They require precise temperatures and communal clusters to hatch, which puts them on a type 3 survivorship curve. That means the highest mortality probably occurs before they even hatch. And if you played Majora's Mask, you're probably well aware of the dangers Zora eggs encounter. Stupid eels! I hate these guys. Go back to Mario 64. But what does that all mean for our star chart? Well, they didn't get a star for population structure, but their population growth might be okay. Between young adults and children, we found 2 girls and 2 boys, but there were 6 very old men. So they are definitely reproducing, but maybe not fast enough to replace their elders. We are going to give them a half star. And with that, the Zora are done. 3 stars? That's not too bad for the elves of the sea. That's basically what they are. They are literally Zelda's like elves. I mean, even though like the Hylians, that maybe the Hylians are the elves. I don't know. It's kind of weird. They were like, they're both elves? I don't know. I think of them as elves. Okay, we've been exploring the smaller cultures in Hyrule, and we keep running into problems with population size. But what about the Hylians? Surely there are enough of them. I mean, they seem like they're everywhere. Well, to find out, we have to take inventory of the whole countryside, because there are 344 Hylians in Tears of the Kingdom. Geez, and I thought like counting pots in Hyrule was tough. This is way worse. But only 107 of them actually live in towns, and that's less than a third. The rest are just scattered about the countryside, in stables, as traveling merchants, and as random guys who, well, fell down a well. Really, it's amazing this race has made it this long. And that means that the Hylians are a meta population, a scattered group of people that only connect through travelers. So to really understand how resilient the population might be, we need to look at each town and stable as its own mini population. Because when the next calamity strikes and the roads are too dangerous to travel, it's every town for itself. So for each survivability category, we will take a quick look at each of the towns individually and then give them an average star rating. Let's start with defenses. It turns out some places are well defended and some places not so much. I hear Terrytown is beautiful this time of year. Let's go check it out. Hey, who's in there? Who's in there? Who's in there? Who's in there? Open up! It's time for a census. Man, it was pretty easy to get into this place. Unless they are prepared to break down their bridge, they are just sitting ducks out here. There aren't any guards here, and no one looks like they would put up much of a fight. I mean, maybe Hudson and, that guy. And it turns out most of the Hylian population lives in places like this, with absolutely no defense. Towns like Hatno and Lurelin, as well as the stables, are just as bad. Luckily, there are a few well-defended places. Lookout Landing is obviously in good shape, but Kakariko Village is probably safe too. I mean, what would you expect from the home of an ancient tribe of Shadowy Gardens? It is definitely hard to find. I mean, I even struggle on the overworld map to find this town. Where is this darn place? All right, it's right there. I found it. It took me like a minute at least. And the narrow roads coming to town should be pretty easy to defend. Not to mention, you know, they're ninjas. And on top of all that, there's Impa's house. Impa's house basically functions as a tenshu, the Japanese equivalent of a castle keep. If any invaders actually made it into the town, it could serve as a last line of refuge for the young or the weak. So with some towns well defended and others literally burnt down, at most we can give them is a half star for defense. But what about sanitation? Well, once again, Lookout Landing and Kakariko might be the only towns doing okay here. These two towns have clear availability of pots for waste collection, and plenty of fireplace ash availability for turning their deposits into high-quality fertilizer. But besides those two towns, the Hylians don't seem to have good sanitation solutions. Terrytown, Lurelin, and the stables have absolutely nothing that could be considered a privy. Luckily, in each of the towns, each family seems to have separate homes, and there is generally good airflow, so disease might be easier to contain. And actually, this is a huge advantage of their spread out population. If illness spreads through one town, since the towns are far apart, it would probably be easy to not contaminate everyone else. So we will give the Hylians another half star for sanitation. And next up is resource availability. Now this is where things get really interesting, because only 2 towns have farms. Terrytown must be importing or foraging everything. Lookout Landing and the stables too. But what about the towns to the south and east? Well, we started by taking a full inventory of all the food in Kakariko. Alright, I'm off to stand outside and count pumpkins in the pumpkin patch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, got it. So, are the farms here enough to feed the population? Well, we counted all of their crops, and while they certainly have fruits and vegetables, the town is severely lacking any basic grain, wheat, rice, or corn. Lurelin is in a similar boat. Get it? Boat. They have ample access to seafood and coconuts, but no grains. But is that a problem? Well, on Earth, grains make up more than 50% of all calorie intake. They are uniquely valuable for 2 reasons. The first is that they provide dense, long-lasting energy, and the second is they don't spoil. When dried and stored properly, grains can be stored of upwards of 30 years. But what about Hatno? I mean, Hatno is practically the breadbasket of Hyrule. Well, they have plenty of meat and dairy and a good amount of fresh vegetables. But more important than all of that, they can also grow wheat and rice. So Hatno might be the only town that grows enough food. Luckily, there is plenty of food in the countryside, wild meat, mushrooms, and even wheat and rice. And that means the survival of this entire race is dependent on foraging and trade. They might seem like an agricultural nation, but they are actually still mostly hunters and gatherers, relying on wild grains and hunting for most of their calorie intake. So when times are good, they are probably okay. But the next time Ganon rises to take over Hyrule, they might not be so fortunate. There is also some clean water out in the wild too, especially in Lanayru and Faron. Kakariko and Terrytown have access to fairly clean water in town, but all the other drinkable water, it's not necessarily close to the towns and stables. So let's give them a half star for resources. And we're down to population. Across every town, stable, and wilderness road here, there are 344 Hylians. And yes, that includes the Sheikah. We know the Sheikah can live significantly longer than other Hylians. Just look at Robbie and Impa. But without direct interference of the goddess, through shrines or through Impa's divine mission in past games, their lifespan may not actually be that long. Additionally, the Sheikah we see in Tears of the Kingdom appear to show more Hylian traits than before. Most notably, they've lost the characteristic of red eyes, that traditionally were associated with the Sheikah clan. And that means it's reasonable to assume that the Sheikah have been intermarrying with the wider Hylian population. And we actually see that in-game. Grante in Terrytown is half Hylian and half Sheikah, with a Hylian mom and the old Sheikah researcher Robbie as his dad. So if the Sheikah aren't an entirely separate clan anymore, it's safe to assume their lifespans and population needs are similar to the rest of the Hylian race. So how does the population of the Sheikah and Hylians look? Well, 344 seems pretty big. That's a good number of people. Until you check the ratio of reproductive men to reproductive women. With 226 men and only 96 women, there are almost 2.5 times as many men as women. But wait, if we're counting the Sheikah, why don't the Gerudo count? Well, stick around, okay? Because what's happening with the Gerudo might be crazier than you think. It's pretty mind-blowing stuff. So how does having not enough women hurt the survival of the Hylian race? Well, it means the effective population size is a lot smaller. Effective population size is the theoretical population size that would experience the same random buildup of mutations. This accumulation of mutation is known as genetic drift. So what is the effective size of Hylians? Math time! The effective population equals 4 times the number of males and number of females divided by the number of males plus the number of females.
諦めんなお前どうしてそこでやめるんだそこでもう少し頑張ってみろよ Never give up!
That gives us an effective population size of approximately 270 people. So genetically, the Hylians act like a much smaller, more vulnerable population. Combine that with the difficulty of travel between subpopulations and the consideration that the single biggest subpopulation is only 33 people, and we can't give the Hylians a star for population structure. Population growth isn't looking too good either, because despite the 22 children and teens in the games, only one new child was born between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And by the time Tears of the Kingdom takes place, there were only 13 children compared to 23 senior citizens. A slow birth rate and way more seniors than kids means we can really only give them half a star for population growth. And in the end, that leaves the Hylians with only 2 stars.
Oh, no!
Zelda, you need to talk to your people. They got some work to do. And that brings us to the last possible saving grace for Hyrule's population, the Gerudo. Tucked away down to the southwest in the heart of the inhospitable desert lies the oasis paradise of Gerudo Town, a city of mystery, full of sparkling waters and the women who might be able to help balance out the Hylians population. They are fierce warriors with excellent defenses and incredible crafters. Look at this water flow, these aqueducts, it's incredible. They have a beautiful city with plenty of running water, clear stations for washing, fresh air, lots of light, and the ability to care for and sequester any ill person in their care. So right off the bat, we could give them a star for defenses and sanitation. Whoa. But what about resources? I mean, they're literally in the middle of a desert. Well, they have an abundant amount of clean drinking water because they have an artesian well. Check that out in our water quality video. It's incredibly fascinating. And they seem to also have a bustling market. But how much of this food is local? A lot of this food actually looks like it's foraged. And with the help of sand seals, these women can easily navigate the desert. But a lot of this food is imported, and there isn't any local access to wheat or rice out here. So for that, we're gonna give the women of the Gerudo Town a half star. But now we get to the most interesting part of this video. The one I have been hyping up since the very beginning. The one I am so excited to talk about, because you may have noticed, but all the Gerudo are female, which is obviously not going to have a reproductive even ratio. And the question is that even possible in nature? Well, it actually is. An incredible little fish from the warm waters of Mexico could be a perfect blueprint for what's happening in Gerudo Town. And look, before you go clacking away on your keyboards in the comments section angry because we are comparing your favorite waifus to fish, hear us out, okay? Because it's all just a theory in the end. The Amazon molly is a species of freshwater fish that are all female. But how is that even possible? Well, normally, an offspring is made with 50% of mom's DNA and 50% of dad's. The sperm and the egg each contribute one copy of DNA. But in mollies, through a quirk in cell division, the female's eggs contains 2 full sets of DNA. That means the baby doesn't need any DNA from dad. Feeling a little bit unincluded here, suddenly? Hey, it's not that type of video. And when it grows, it will be a complete clone of the mother. But there's a catch. These eggs are asleep. These eggs won't start growing until they have been introduced to sperm. That means the female Molly must mate with a male of a closely related species to kickstart the egg into growing. Incredibly, the father's DNA is kicked out and never used. That's why there aren't any male babies. But that can't be what's happening with the Gerudo, right? Because every 100 years a male child is born to the Gerudo, and he always wants to conquer everything. Well, it turns out that happens in Amazon Mollies too. Minus the conquering part. A little less than 1% of the time, the male DNA makes its way inside the egg, meaning that every 1 in 100 Molly births results in a male. And it gets even crazier, because these males are triploid. That means they have 3 full sets of DNA, 2 full sets from mom, and 1 full set from dad. So why does that matter? Well, triploid organisms often have gigantism. That means they grow to much larger sizes. So the result is the male fish is way larger than the females around him. And if we were to look at Ganondorf, bro is quite big. I mean, look, the Gerudo, they aren't fish. It's just a theory, guys. But it's possible that the offspring of the Gerudo women are created using only the DNA of the mother. They still need a VO to help jumpstart the growth of the baby, but the dad's DNA might not get used. And then, once every 100 years, a triploid male is born. And the gigantism that comes with triploid males might explain why Ganondorf towers above the rest of Hyrule. Dude is tall. He needs to play basketball. Boom. Not in my house. While Nintendo never gave Ganon a canon height, he is nearly twice the width of the standard Hylian and stands a full head and shoulders above even the tallest of the Gerudo women in the throne room. Obviously, this is just a theory, but if it's true or close to true, then it would mean the Gerudo populations are far more sustainable than they appear. Because if their reproduction is asexual or unisexual, they don't need big populations. Just like the Gorons, if the DNA of only one parent is required, then breeding isn't a problem. So with 80 adults, 3 teens, and 3 children, the Gerudo are looking pretty secure. And even better than that, we found 2 new girls born between the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And that's great news for their population sustainability. With only 7 Gerudo women in the senior category, they are reproducing fast enough to replace themselves. And that means, assuming our theory is true, we can give them a star for population structure and growth. That's 4.5 stars. But what if our theory isn't true? If VO are required for mixing DNA, then a population of only women and a long, dangerous journey to find a mate means the Gerudo are in serious danger. That would drop them down to only 3.5 stars. So, to make this kind of work with our theory and not theory, we decided to average both of them. We're going to give the Gerudo a whopping 4 stars. These ladies are so cool. I knew they were tough. Yes. I mean, just look at this footage of her just like in front of the sunset. This is one of my favorite things I've ever filmed in this game. And that's it. So let's look back and see how all the races did. Wow, most of Hyrule is not in good shape. It looks like most of the races struggled with population size and resources. Well, at least it's good to know the Gorons will always be around. They were the only race that really didn't struggle with anything, except for speaking on YouTube. It's hard after like 3 hours of filming. But what do all these stars actually mean? Are Hyrule's populations vanishing? Well, not yet. But it's very close, like dangerously close. The most alarming category was population structure, specifically population size. Almost all of the races and subpopulations had fewer than 50 individuals, and that's bad for the buildup of mutations. So even without another calamity, there is a chance that the Zora and Rito just might not have numbers to keep going. But it turns out that in the real world, a number of species have come back from the brink of extinction. You might have heard success stories like the Andean condor. But have you heard of the Mauritius kestrel? I hope I'm saying that right.
Mauritius.
Don't judge me too hard, okay? It came back from only 4 individuals to a population of almost 400. That's right, 4 to 400. I love a good comeback story. So that might be great news for the Zora and the Rito. But they aren't totally immune to problems because their populations have low genetic diversity and almost no ability to adapt to new diseases or a change in the environment. So if the next scourge on Hyrule causes any environmental disaster or plague, the Rito and the Zora will be gone. Yikes. Especially if the waters are polluted again. With a half-star in sanitation, the Zora could be in serious trouble. And the other races might not be far behind. Hyrule is not a nice place. Throughout the games, many disasters and invading forces have devastated the land. Let's just imagine that Death Mountain erupts again. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time. And death is literally in its name. Who would survive? Well, surprisingly, the Gorons would probably be okay. After all, they literally can stand in lava. But what about the other races? Well, the Rito could probably fly away, but they would have to go south and rely on the Hylians for their food. The Zora, though, would be in bigger trouble because volcanic ash carried on wind would pollute the rivers. And given how sensitive the Zora are, if the pollution made its way to Zora's domain, they would have to go out to the sea. Luckily, they are formidable warriors and good hunters, so perhaps they could find a home in Lurelin. But if the Rito or the Zora lost anyone on the journey, they aren't reproducing fast enough to recover. So even if they make it south, that's probably just a temporary refuge before they fade into legend. We've seen countless times in our world, from the San Benedicto rock rend that was wiped out by a single volcano eruption, to the Laysan Rail, wiped out by a local flood. Fortunately, the Gerudo are probably far enough south to avoid the worst of the eruption. But here's the catch. The Gerudo need the Hylians. So would the Hylians survive? Well, Terrytown and Lookout Landing and all the northern stables are probably doomed. Hylians can't travel as quickly as the Rito or the Zora. And well, we know what happened in Pompeii. So could the southern populations carry on the Hylian race by themselves? Probably for a little while, because luckily most of the Hylian women lived to the south. The population was skewed heavily towards men, and so evening out that ratio might not change their effective population size very much. That means that losing half the population might not seal their fate. But if it isn't disease or disaster that takes them out, the people of Hyrule might still be at risk of starvation. Because shockingly, almost all their food is foraged. We already saw one severe blizzard nearly end the Rito, but this could easily happen to Hylians or even the Gerudo as well. And what if a drought happened? Well, the Zora and the Gorons might be okay. Rocks and seafood aren't affected by drought. But if the farms of Necluda withered and the wild wheat didn't produce, the other small populations in Hyrule might not survive. Without grains, the population would be reliant on wild meat, and hunting meat is risky. Those boars can really mess you up. But even if the races work together to hunt and find food, losing access to grains could easily decrease their population numbers past recovery. And in the end, that's the problem with tiny populations. That's why conservation organizations work so hard to keep populations above 500. Because when any disturbance happens, a natural disaster like a flood, a disease, or an invasive species even, small populations aren't resilient. Whether it's drought or danger, the people of Hyrule will struggle to find food. So it may not take an invasion of gloom monsters to wipe them out. Even just the natural forces of the world could change the faces we see in Hyrule forever. First the Rito, and then the Hylians, and then the Zora. And if the Hylians disappear, the Gerudo will follow. But maybe there is hope. Maybe in a world with magic fairies where you can summon the rain with an ocarina or change the seasons with a stick, maybe the citizens of Hyrule might make it. If the chosen hero can control the forces in nature, time, and save the people countless times over, maybe there is hope. But what do you think? Are the people of Hyrule one disaster away from disappearing? Or are there factors we missed? Are the Zora or the Rito doing better than we give them credit for? Let us know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, hype the video, check out our Discord and Patreon. And remember, stay healthy out there. My name is MamaGoron. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.
Where have you been? Been searching all along. Keep facing twilight on and on. Without a clue, without a sign, without grasping at the real question to be asked. Where have I been? I'm a shapeshifter at Post Masquerade, hiding both face and mind, all free for you to draw. I'm a shapeshifter, what else should I be? Please don't take off my mask, revealing dark. Moments of calm, nothing left to be found. A mirror right in front of me.
Hold up. Hold.
Reflecting the sad it's telling words not to be told. I need the mask. I'm a shapeshifter at Post Masquerade, hiding both face and mind, all free for you to draw.
Man, all this talk about food is really making me hungry. But theory here, Link could totally just run food to everybody. I mean, really, he could quit his job being the champion of the people and start a transportation business. I mean, have you seen what Link can carry? Necluda isn't the breadbasket of Hyrule. It's Link. Look how much food he has. But I don't really know if we want to be taking food from Link here, because he's also carrying monster guts and bombs in his pack. In fact, is any of this safe to carry? Wait. That's it? Is Link's bag safe to carry? Because he carries some crazy stuff throughout the franchise. Well, I guess we should get started, because this research is going to be explosive.
I'm a shapeshifter, have no face to show. Please don't take off my mask.